If you want to become a more creative game developer, this video is for you. I'm Christian and I'm not only an indie dev, but my wife and I also run a small and successful consulting agency where we help teams to become more creative. And for instance, one of our customers is the Wacken Open Air, the world's largest metal festival. And there's a pretty large overlap between the metal and the gaming scene. So why should you aspire to become more creative? Well, creative solutions are usually considered to be superior, better, more surprising. And creativity is the process that leads to more creative solutions. And game development is specifically suited for being creative because there are so many areas you can surprise your player. You can have a fun gameplay idea, a moving story, a specific visual appearance, or a convincing sound design. But creativity can be very fulfilling, so not only your game will benefit, but also your personality. So how to become more creative? Well, the first step is to acknowledge that you actually can become more creative. And this sounds trivial, but here's the point. I'm a theoretical physicist and I grew up under the impression there's a division between rational or scientific, analytical people on the one hand side and creative people on the other side. Yes, there are differences between people and people have different talents and like to do different things, but it doesn't mean they can't be creative in their respective fields. So whatever you like to do, whether it's coding, 3D art, 2D art, sound design, level design, whatever it is, you can become more creative in your respective field. To get deeper, we need some kind of understanding what creativity is about. And I try to come up with a definition that's practical and gives some guidance. So here's what I come up with. Creativity is the attempt to improve the experience of your players. And to live up to this definition, we need some ingredients. So we need something like craftsmanship, empathy for your players, inspiration and some external influences, and some tips for the process and your mindset. So let's start to digest my definition to see what areas come up where you can improve your creativity. First, I defined creativity as being an attempt to improve the experience of your player. Creativity is the opponent to efficiency, and there's a great talk by Cleese of Monty Python. Creativity requires a kind of experimental mindset, so you need to try out a lot of things and many of them won't work. And by doing this and continuing this journey, you enhance the chance to find a more creative solution. The second part is the focus on the player in my definition. And for me, this is very essential. So if you build something that doesn't resonate with other people, then it's not about creativity. Creativity for me is about surprising other people, not only yourself. So you need to gain a deep understanding of your players and what they expect, what they like to play, when they play, with whom they play, in what kind of situation they play, do they play mobile or on the PC and all that stuff. And I will do a video on a tool called Persona that might help you to gain that insight on your player. So the last part of the definition is to improve the experience. And this is where creativity goes beyond an idea. Nobody cares about your game dev idea unless you are able to implement it and show it and somebody can try it out and play your game, at least on a prototyping level. So for sure you need crafting skills. You need to be able to handle Blender or Unreal or Unity engine or do programming, whatever you are focusing on. And yes, that means you constantly need to improve your crafting skills. But I recommend to do it in a very specific way. So if you follow a tutorial on an online course, you have to make the content your own. What do I mean by that? Here's an example. Some time ago, I followed an online course and the goal was to implement a so-called rail shooter. A rail shooter is a game type where the spaceship follows a given path defined by so-called waypoints. And I thought, if it's called rail shooter, why not use a train for that? So my idea was not to follow the course using a spaceship, but to use a train. So my challenge was to get the train follow a certain track. And I remembered that in Unity there's a camera system called Cinemachine and it comes with a waypoint system. So I asked myself, can I use this waypoint system to get the train following this track? And actually it worked out pretty well. And then I thought, oh, that might be a cool idea for other game devs to know about. So I made a video out of it. So I did a couple of things at the same time. I acquired new skills, I did experiments, I came up with a new solution which I then shared with my fellow game devs. And in this way, I improved their experience. And this is what creativity is about. So here are a couple more tips to improve your creativity. As an indie dev, you will always face limitations. There are a lot of things you can do, but there are a lot of other things you can't. And maybe other people can do them and bigger teams can do, but you can't. And instead of getting frustrated by this fact, you should embrace these limitations and constraints. And here's another example. I am by no means an artist, and for my game Beans or Bones, I early decided to go for a low poly approach and to mainly use 3D asset I bought on the asset store. But then I asked myself, despite the fact that I'm using only third-party assets and going a low poly approach, can I create a swamp environment that resembles the atmosphere of a real swamp? And I tried it and it worked pretty nicely, and I created another video and shared it with the community. And what helped was that I asked myself a very specific question. I asked myself, can I create a low poly swamp environment that resembles the atmosphere of a real swamp? So to become more creative, you have to ask that kind of very specific questions. Don't just ask very generically, how can I make my game more fun? But put into all the constraints that you are facing and come up with a very specific question, and this will really help you to improve your creativity. So here's another secret that amazes me anytime I realize it, because it sounds so trivial. Any creative solution is made of pre-existing elements. So anything I put into my train solution or my swamp solution existed before. The only difference is I put them into a different context and I combined them in a new and unforeseen way. So the more you know and the more elements you bring from outside game dev into the game dev world will boost your creativity, because again, you enhance the chance to find something new and surprising. So go out and seek inspiration, read books, go into museums, do sports, whatever, and try to bring these ideas into the game world. And then do experiments, share your results, get feedback, and put the feedback back into experiments to improve your results. And in this way, you will end up with more and more creative solutions. And don't rush. Watch the talk by Cleese and understand that becoming more creative takes time. But over time you will see your results will improve, you will get more creative, and the process gets more fulfilling.